So today I was speaking with Aishwarya, and she said, how do we know what words should be chosen for people to understand Savitri better? Well, that's a very difficult question because there are people with so many different languages, and English is not their first language. So what I have tried to do with my wife in the lexicon is put as much as possible, as many definitions as possible, because, for example, the word intuitive. Sri Aurobindo says, held by intuitive heart and secret sense. Now this intuitive heart here is not the reasoning heart, and usually intuitive means reasoning or observing. Now, the problem here is that this is a spiritual definition, and it contains spiritual perception. And when Sri Aurobindo tells us this second degree, beginning with the higher mind, illumined mind, intuitive mind. So that's where we get the intuition from. So it's not a common definition of intuitive heart. So we'll take a moment and I'll begin. Of course, we are speaking of Ashwapati and all of the realizations that he's receiving. It caught the burden of secrecies, sealed and dumb. Now, a burden has many different definitions in English, but this burden is something, what we could say, something that has to be borne, a load. There are other definitions that speak of something emotionally difficult to bear. Oh, I have a great burden on me. I have to take care of this person. That is not the definition in this line. This caught the burden of secrecies, that is something that is a load that has to be borne. And those secrecies are sealed and dumb. When I asked Amal about dumb, he replied, Sri Aurobindo uses the word dumb in the sense of mute, but never of stupid or lacking in intelligence. I think the latter usage is more slang than literature. Beautifully written. It voiced the unfulfilled demand of earth. So here the word voiced is a verb, and it means to give utterance or expression to something. And the song of promise of unrealized heavens and all that hides in an omnipotent sleep. Now we have Mother's words here in the Supreme Discovery, and I want to share them with you. It'll take a few minutes, but if you have not read it before, it's a small book and you should all read it. It's a song of promise, and it's called the Supreme Discovery. Mother writes, do you not know this, that the most sublime forces of the vasts seek to array themselves in the most opaque veils of matter? O the sublime love, with the obscurest plasticity, of the shadows yearning with the most royal light. If ordeal or fault has cast you down, if you have sunk into the nether depths of suffering, do not grieve, for there indeed the divine love and the supreme blessing can reach you. Because you have passed through the crucible of purifying sorrows, the glorious ascents are yours. You are in the wilderness. Then listen to the voices of the silence. The clamor of flattering words and outer applause has gladdened your ears, but the voices of the silence will gladden your soul and awaken within you the echo of the depths, the chant of divine harmonies. You are walking in the depths of night. Then gather the priceless treasures of the night. In bright sunshine, the ways of intelligence are lit, but in the white luminosities of the night lie the hidden paths of perfection, the secret of spiritual riches. You are being stripped of everything. That is the way towards plenitude. When you have nothing left, everything will be given to you. Because for those who are sincere and true, the worst always comes the best. From the worst always comes the best. Every grain that is sown in the earth produces 1,000. Every wingbeat of sorrow can be a soaring towards glory. And when the adversary pursues man relentlessly, everything he does to destroy him only makes him greater. Hear the story of the worlds. Look, the great enemy seems to triumph. He casts the beings of light into the night, and the night is filled with stars. He rages against the cosmic working. He assails the integrity of the empire of the sphere, shatters its harmony, divides and subdivides it, scatters its dust to the four winds of infinity, and lo, the dust is changed into a golden seed, fertilizing the infinite and peopling it with worlds which now gravitate around their eternal center in the larger orbit of space, so that even division creates a richer and deeper unity. And by multiplying the surfaces of the material universe, enlarges the empire that it set out to destroy. Beautiful indeed was the song of the primordial sphere, cradled in the bosom of immensity. But how much more beautiful and triumphant is the symphony of the constellations, the music of the spheres, the immense choir that fills the heavens with an eternal hymn of victory. Here again, no state was ever more precarious than that of man when he was separated on earth from his divine origin. Above him stretched the hostile borders of the usurper, and at his horizon's gates watched jailers armed with flaming swords. Then, since he could climb no more to the source of life, the source arose within him. Since he could no more receive the light from above, the light shone forth at the very center of his being. Since he could commune no more with the transcendent love, that love offered itself in a holocaust and chose each terrestrial being, each human self, as its dwelling place and sanctuary. That is how, in this despised and desolate, but fruitful and blessed matter, each atom contains a divine thought. Each being carries within him the divine inhabitant. And if no being in all the universe is as frail as man, neither is any as divine as he. In truth, in humiliation lies the cradle of glory. We can apply Mother's words to many of the lines that follow. In the unceasing drama carried by time, on its long listening flood that bears the world's insoluble doubt, on a pilgrimage without goal, a laughter of sleepless pleasure foamed and spumed, and murmurings of desire that cannot die, a cry came of the world's delight to be. The grandeur and greatness of its will to live, recall of the soul's adventure into space, a traveler through the magic centuries, and being's labor in matter's universe, its search for the mystic meaning of its birth, and joy of high spiritual response, its throb of satisfaction and content in all the sweetness of the gifts of life, its large breath and pulse and thrill of hope and fear, its taste of pangs and tears and ecstasy, its rapture's poignant beat of sudden bliss, the sob of its passion and unending pain. Now, in the unceasing drama carried by time, I believe there are 16 lines without a period, without a full stop. 16 lines, so I had to read them all. Oh, so fantastic. Now, on the long listening flood that bears the world's insoluble doubt, this semiotician, Roland Barthes, characterized the distinction between listening and hearing. He says, hearing is a physiological phenomenon. Listening is a psychological act. We are always hearing most of the time, subconsciously. Listening is done by choice. Now, why is there this line, insoluble doubt on a pilgrimage without goal? The definition of insoluble tells us that it is incapable of being solved or explained, something that has no possible solution. And why is he saying that? Because he's saying, and then we have to go through the rest of these 12 or 13 lines to understand. First of all, a laughter of sleepless pleasure, foamed and spumed. Foamed is becoming a froth of small bubbles. Spumed is also frothed in a way. So it's almost two synonyms combined by Sri Aurobindo to make us feel this laughter of sleepless pleasure. It never sleeps. It foams and it spumes, and this murmuring and murmurings of desire that cannot die. Now, desire here is different from the desire that we usually define. It's sort of a low conscious sound, like a brook, the wind, or trees. It's whispered, it's confidential, it's muttering. And then from these mutterings of desire that cannot die came these extraordinary lines. A cry came of the world's delight to be, the grandeur and greatness of its will to live, recall of the soul's adventure into space, a traveler through the magic centuries, and being's labor in matter's universe, its search for the mystic meaning of its birth, and joy of high spiritual response, its throb of satisfaction and content in all the sweetness of the gifts of life, its large breath and pulse and thrill of hope and fear, its taste of pangs and tears and ecstasy, its rapture's poignant beat of sudden bliss, the sob of its passion and unending pain. The only word that needs a little understanding is poignant. And many people pronounce the G, but the G is silent. Poignant means piercing or incisive or something agreeably intense or stimulating. The murmur and whisper of the unheard sounds which crowd around our hearts but find no window to enter, swelled into a canticle of all that suffers to be still unknown, and all that labors vainly to be born, and all the sweetness none will ever taste, and all the beauty that will never be. Well, it does seem very negative here, but we have to look forward and backward. So this passion of an unending pain, these unending sounds that come, and they crowd around our heart. These are the divine sounds, the sounds of the gods, the music of the spheres, etc. But they find no window to enter, swelled into a canticle. Now, a canticle is a song or a poem or a hymn, especially one that is praiseful in character. And so we see that we know that all this will be that seems now not to be able to become, because it has been promised to us by Sri Aurobindo and Mother. But we've just begun with Savitri, so I have to continue on. I want to talk to you a little bit about the definition of Savitri from Purani, who was a great Vedic scholar and an incredible wrestler. He had a huge build, and he'd stand outside the ashram gate, topless, just with his lungi, and he was like a god. He was a dear, dear friend. And when I was so young, he treated me like an adult. He would talk to me so beautifully. So let me quote some things on Savitri now, because we're almost, wow, so quick. Purani, the word Savitri is derived from the word Savitru, which in its turn is derived from the root su, to give birth to. The word soma, which indicates an exhilarating drink, symbolizing spiritual ecstasy or delight, is also derived from the same root, su. It links, therefore, the creation and the delight of creation. Savitru, therefore, means the divine creator, one who gives birth to or brings forth from himself into existence the creation. In the Veda, Savita is the god of illumination, the god of creation. Usually he is represented by the material sun, which also illuminates the solar system and is its creator and sustainer in the material sense. Savitri, therefore, would mean etymologically someone descended from the sun. And this is what Mother told us Savitri was. And in the very beginning of Savitri, Sri Aurobindo, in his editor's note, tells us that Savitri came from the sun. Now here's a few words of the Mother on Savitri. Savitri is a mantra for the transformation of the world. This she told to Udar. Now, she also said to Norman Dowsett, whom I knew very well, and his son, for the opening of the psychic, for the growth of consciousness, and even for the improvement of English, it is good to read 1 or 2 pages of Savitri each day. And then she said to Satprem in 1963, I believe that is his message. All the rest are the preparations, but Savitri is the message. All the rest of his books are just preparations, but Savitri is the method, the message. Yes, certainly.
Still relevant. I think Life Divine, wasn't this after Savitri?
Savitri, well, that's a detailed question. I will answer you in detail. When Sri Aurobindo first came to the ashram and met Mother's husband, Paul Richard, who was actually an asura, Mother said she kept him because he was an asura, so he couldn't do damage to the world. He said to Sri Aurobindo, we have to have you write things on different aspects of the yoga. And that is how the Arya began. Sri Aurobindo, once a month, he would be told the day before, tomorrow you have to have everything ready because it's the day of the month when we print. And he would write up to 7 different books at a time. He'd write a chapter in Life Divine, a chapter in Synthesis of Yoga, a chapter in Essays on the Gita, the Vedas, all at once, in one night. But Savitri, he wrote all his life. So Savitri went through all the stages of his life. The Arya ended with incredible books. So I'll just do a little more and then we have a little time. Inaudible to our deaf mortal ears, the wide world rhythms wove their stupendous chant, to which life strives to fit our rhyme beats here, melting our limits in the illimitable, tuning the finite to infinity. So now we see that when something is inaudible, it's not loud enough to be heard. Inaudible to our deaf mortal ears, the wide world rhythms, hyphenated world rhythms, wove their stupendous chant, to which life strives to fit our rhyme beats here, melting our limits in the illimitable, tuning the finite to infinity. And that's a good place to end because we're going to a different section after that. So, namaste to you all. And Shaili, will you read for us from the beginning? Any questions?
Can I share something?
Sure.
I read an article. If people can be just put in a room with a total silence, literally total silence with all the frequencies, they are generally going mad, or they are losing their sense of consciousness, because they start to hear everything comes from within, all the blood into the veins and all the sounds that comes within. When we read the last passage, I just reminded that maybe that sounds coming from inside, and the divine sounds actually wants to come and looking for a window. It's just veiled with all these earthly voices of outside. That's why even if we, with the help of science or the other things, if we just stop all the earthly sounds, then we cannot take it. Like the light is just crashing us because we are not searching for it from inside.
This is why Sri Aurobindo tells us the first thing you must have in this yoga is peace and calm. And then you have to silence the mind. And when you can silence the mind even a little bit, then a collective gathering can invoke the presence of the divine, and the divine will be with you. He's with us right now. He's always with us in the Om choir. And we had this extraordinary Om choir Tuesday night. So wherever people gather in love and devotion, the divine is there for sure. The problem occurs with all these minds not being able to stop, and each one having a different vibration. And so the essential thing is stopping that mind and just, even for a time, being absolutely silent so the divine presence can descend. Om, Om, Om.